NAACP who had the brilliance and vision to bring him as their leader and to support him. We thank you for once again guiding us. It is my honor to give you the President of the NAACP, Cornell Williams Brooks.
There are moments in life when the awesome weight of the occasion gives one a profound sense of humility. I took one step, but I'm just smart enough to know that could not have taken a second step without every single person who participated, supported, prayed for, encouraged, lifted up America's journey for justice. That would be all of you. There are a group of people in this extraordinarily historic sanctuary who have breached all manner of liturgical and probably synagogue protocols by wearing these garishly yellow shirts. If, as the rabbi said, you took a single step on America's journey for justice, I want you to put both feet on the floor and stand, that people might see. And my brothers and sisters, if you had the courage to hope and to pray for this journey for justice and support this journey for justice and stand with this journey for justice, I want you to stand on your feet. There should be everyone standing. We are here at the culmination of this journey in a place that I was welcomed to for Martin Luther King's service many months ago. And at that time, I had the occasion to meet an extraordinary leader. That would be Rabbi Bruce Lustig. When we issued the Macedonian call to support this journey, he answered. And not only did he answer for himself, not only did he answer for his family, he answered on behalf of an extraordinary congregation. That would be the Washington Hebrew congregation who stood with us in our time of need. We say to you, thank you for your love, thank you for your support, thank you for your prayers, thank you for demonstrating by your hospitality that in the midst of hospitality, there's a theophany. We're reminded that Abraham and Sarah welcomed two angels and the Lord, and they provided bountifully, provided out of their generosity, love, and hospitality to strangers and sojourners in their midst. And God showed up. So being in this place, surrounded by this hospitality, being fed so wonderfully and loved so deeply, we have no doubt that God showed up. and to this distinguished group of rabbis and cantors who serve with Rabbi Lustig and who provide such a wonderful ministry here to this congregation and to this city, we simply say thank you. We say to these pulpit associates, these brothers and sisters in ministry of diverse faiths and traditions, who thought it not robbery to come to God's house and share their gifts of ministry, we say thank you. And to the board of directors of the NAACP, led by Rosalind McAllister Brock, to the folks who stood with America's Journey for Justice day in and day out, we say thank you. And to our special contribution fund, who were charged with the responsibility of raising a few pennies for America's Journey for Justice, we say thank you. To the extraordinary staff of the NAACP, who, despite their many gifts, do not seem to have the ability to read the fine print in a job description. Somewhere in a footnote in subscript, it may have said something about going on a journey for justice, sleeping in sleeping bags, in cots, in churches and synagogues, working from sunup to sundown, whether they were in the field or back at headquarters. If I can ask everyone here to stand on your feet with the exception of the staff of the NAACP and put your hands together for folks who work long and hard to ensure that we got here safely. Now, my brothers and sisters, that portion of the program called Acknowledgements is really just a fancy way of saying appreciation. We would not be here for a distinguished group of rabbis who are activists at heart in the prophetic and profound and biblical sense of the word. I want to lift up for appreciation Rabbi Joshua Pesner. I want to lift up for appreciation for his extraordinary leadership, Seth Limmer. Now, I want to... Now, this is a dangerous group of rabbis. And not given to thinking long or hard about difficult decisions. Because it is my understanding that I was on a phone call, blissfully unaware of who I was talking to. And Seth Limmer was on the call, I think, substituting for Rabbi Joshua Pesner. Seth answered, oh, sorry, I said Jonah Pesner. Seth heard me issue a call for supporting this march. Seth goes out and organizes prematurely, I suspect without much authorization, a seed group of rabbis. I think it was about maybe 40 or so. By the time Rabbi Pesner gets back, he's already committed to supporting a journey I'm sure he knew nothing about. But the group of 40 or 50 grew to be 100, then 150, then 200. To put that in context, that means 1 out of every 10 Reformed rabbis in the country participated in America's Journey for Justice. That's extraordinary. I'd just like to lift up a few thoughts on America's Journey for Justice. If you might, exercise your moral imagination. If I can call upon you to paint on the palette of the heart and mind a vision and image of a group of seekers of social justice, sojourners of social justice, starting out in a small town in Alabama that might be relegated to the footnotes of history and obscurity, were it not for the courage and bravery of those foot soldiers of the civil rights movement who found themselves on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And in 2015, there were a group of sojourners of social justice and seekers of social justice who traveled from all corners of the country and descended on this place called Selma. They purposed within their hearts to travel from Selma, Alabama to Washington, D.C. They purposed in their hearts to travel a distance of 867 miles across 5 states, 3 purple states, 2 red states, into 1 blue District of Columbia. They purposed in their hearts to march under a glorious banner of purpose, that being our lives, our votes, our jobs, and our schools matter. They purposed in their hearts to stand for the proposition that our lives matter. And that when we say Black Lives Matter, we understand that it is a premise for the moral conclusion that all lives matter. Our lives matter whether your skin is black or your uniform is blue. We stand for that proposition. We march for that proposition. And we're here today validating that moral proposition. These sojourners and seekers, clad in hiking boots and jogging shoes and athletic wear and yarmulkes, carrying a Torah from Selma, Alabama to Washington, D.C. These sojourners and seekers of justice carried a Torah. They weren't all Reformed Jews. Some were Reformed, some were Orthodox, some were conservative, some were Baptist, some were Methodist, some were Pentecostal, some hadn't been to temple in a little while, some hadn't been to church in a little while. But nevertheless, of every color and every creed, of every religion and every race, of every hue and every heritage, from little children to older children, from adolescents to senior citizens, they carried the Torah. And one of the things that we discovered is that when you carry the Torah, whether you lay the Torah across your right shoulder or whether you lay the Torah across your left shoulder, when you carry the Torah, it is impossible to carry this holy book. It's impossible to carry this sacred scripture without the words of God laying upon your heart, crossing your chest and crossing your heart. It's impossible to carry God's word without it weighing upon your heart. And so we, carrying God's word, prayed in the morning, prayed in the evening. We prayed without pretension. We prayed without arrogance, profoundly aware of our flaws, our foibles, our faults as human beings, profoundly aware of our weakness, profoundly aware of our inability to do anything unless God put it in our hearts and gave us the ability to do that. We understood profoundly that what we were attempting to do was impossible as a consequence of human capability, but altogether possible because with God, all things are possible. And And so we marched, believing in our hearts that ours was a righteous cause, believing in our hearts that you cannot reduce this campaign, this march, to a set of political positions. This was not a matter of being a Republican or a Democrat, not a matter of being on the left or on the right, but a matter of standing for righteousness, standing for justice, standing for truth, standing on our hopes, standing on our dreams, standing on our moral aspirations, standing for the proposition that we, the people, can make a difference with our God in our country in this time. And so we marched, mindful of what our forebears did. We marched, understanding that the right to vote is a civic sacrament, and the voting booth is the altar of our democracy. And when you suppress the vote, when you deny the vote, when you engage in voter disenfranchisement, you desecrate our democracy, you desecrate the voting rights booth, you desecrate our Constitution, and you desecrate our character as a country, and we will not allow you to do that. We march with a deep and profound sense of patriotism. We marched beside a brother who had the temerity to call himself, to name himself, Middle Passage, invoking a wonderful history and a difficult passage for African Americans. We walked beside a brother named Middle Passage who walked 920 miles. As a Vietnam veteran, as a veteran of the Navy, he carried the American flag. I use the verb carried because there are those who wave the flag symbolically, but Middle Passage carried the flag substantively, carried the flag in service, carried the flag in service to our country. And when we came to Spotsylvania, not too far from Fredericksburg, there was a rainstorm. He covered the flag to ensure that it did not get wet. But when the sun came out, as we were standing at a traffic light, he unfurled the flag, and after he did so, he collapsed, and he died on this journey for justice. Now I have to tell you that a moment like that weighs on the heart. A moment like that weighs on the conscience. A moment like that rests on the soul. And I pose a question to you that our young people pose to us. If a man was willing to die for the right to vote, why can't our people vote and stand up for the right to vote? Middle Passage, by the eloquence of his example, made clear to me that there's a patriotism that is demonstrated by one's actions, demonstrated by one's sacrifice, demonstrated by one's convictions, demonstrated by one's character. And when you see a man march 920 miles for the right to vote, the least we can do is stand up and fight and protect the right to vote. We in the NAACP understand all too well that in the constellation of our constitutional rights, in the firmament of our freedoms, stands and shines the North Star, which is our right to vote. We will not allow that light to dim. We will not allow that light to darken. We will not allow that light to go out. We will not give in. We will not give up. We will never go back, because we will stand and protect the right to vote. We have not come this far, over this many miles, to turn around. And so we marched under the banner, our lives, our votes, our jobs, our schools matter. We march because our lives matter, and we have to bring about an end to racial profiling. We march because we understand that our schools matter, and that when you have children who are brilliant and bright, but their brilliance and brightness is wrapped in black and brown skin, it is not right to relegate them to third-class schools in a first-class country. We understand that our jobs matter, because we understand that jobs are not merely about net worth, but about self-worth, not merely about dollars, but about dignity. And so we're marching. And we have marched to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, because we understand that when you have income inequality, the worst it's been since 1928, before the Great Depression, and a rising tide of social immobility that threatens to drown the hopes, the dreams, and the aspirations of the middle class, the working class, and everything but the upper class, we have to take responsibility for the future of our country and the future of our workers. But this is not merely about legislation. That's important. But it's also about the character of our country. And because we in the NAACP understand that it's not about simply legislation, it's about the stands we take and the values we hold dear. And so we are not embarrassed to say that we draw our inspiration from time to time from the wisdom of the Scriptures. And I'm reminded of a little story in the book of Numbers about a people not unlike the people here in this Washington Hebrew congregation. They understand this story all too well. There were a group of people who escaped the ravages and the fetters of slavery, found themselves in a wilderness, and found themselves on the edge of the promised land. The Lord told them to select out a group of scouts. And they sent these scouts into the promised land to determine whether or not the promised land was indeed the land of God's promise. And the scouts came back with two reports, essentially, a good report and a bad report. They both agreed that from an agricultural perspective, the land of God's promise was a wonderful place to be. It was abounding in milk and honey. The text yet tells us that there was a single cluster of grapes that two men had to carry. And these grapes were not genetically modified. Text tells us that one set of scouts or spies provided a majority report, if you will. They said that the land is indeed abounding in milk and honey, but the land is filled with giants, people of great stature, intimidating people, intimidating opponents, intimidating enemies. But there was a man by the name of Caleb. I believe he had an NAACP life membership card. They tell me that he said, "Let us go up and take the land." And the verb used in the text is "we can overcome." Here we stand on the edge of the promised land, ever mindful that one of God's prophets by the name of Martin Luther King found himself in Memphis, Tennessee on the edge and on the eve of his death. And he said, I've looked over and seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land together. And so here we are on the edge of the promised land. And there are those who are trying to convince us that there are giants in the promised land. There are large opponents in the promised land. There are people who would deny your right to vote in the promised land. There are those who would deny your seat at the American table of democracy in the promised land. And we say to them, we respectfully disagree with the majority report. We not only do not consider the opponents giants, we certainly do not consider ourselves grasshoppers. We don't have a grasshopper philosophy. We don't have a grasshopper mindset. We don't have a grasshopper mentality. And we certainly do not have grasshopper organizations, grasshopper synagogues, grasshopper churches, grasshopper unions, grasshopper civic organizations. We don't have a grasshopper mindset. We are not grasshoppers. They are the grasshoppers, and we are the giants. And so we marched 1,000 miles. Mindful that the Selma to Montgomery March in 1965 was 50 miles. And that Mohandas K. Gandhi's Salt March in 1930 was 241 miles. But we marched 1,000 miles, giving 1,000 miles of determination, 1,000 miles of courage, 1,000 miles of commitment, 1,000 miles of conviction, 1,000 miles of hope, 1,000 miles of love, 1,000 miles of resolve, 1,000 miles of determination. And we are here. And so tomorrow, grandparents will link arms with grandchildren. Jews will link arms with Gentiles. Those who are lapsed in their synagogue attendance will join hands with those who've lapsed in their church attendance. And we will make our way to the Upper Senate Park at 9 o'clock tomorrow to go door to door in Congress and to assert our justice agenda. And make no mistake, there may be someone here who's still a little discouraged, still a little hope challenged, still a little reserved in your conviction that we can do anything we purpose within our hearts to do because of the God we serve. If by chance that's where you are this evening, I simply lift up these words from a hymn of the NAACP, words that have mellifluent biblical power and melodic prophetic authority. The words would be these: lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on. Let us march on. Let us march on. Let us march on. Let us march on, let us march on till victory is won.